Hey guys, this is transformation specialist Rob Lopicola. There is a scene called the CHEMSEX scene, and a chunk of my life story was directly involved in that lifestyle, the CHEMSEX lifestyle. I was sex addicted and methamphetamine addicted, and along with my methamphetamine, I used GHB, which is gamma hydroxybutyrate. That, in conjunction with crystal meth, leads to a severe addiction. And I was so wrapped in that addiction that nothing else mattered in my life other than to use, get high on crystal meth and GHB, and of course, heavily involved in my active sex addiction. Here I am, though, nearly 12 years sober and clean. Oh, am I grateful that I am out of that scene for nearly 12 years. And I am so grateful to live a life today that is peaceful and serene, and one that I am just loving preciously. But those years involved in the CHEMSEX scene were dark, debilitating, physically and emotionally degrading, and spiritually basically dead. In fact, my addiction to crystal meth, GHB, and sex led to me begging God to die. I didn't want to live anymore. And I was living this way for a few years. It was a time in my life where I just felt so lost and so hopeless and empty and just void of living. And I remember looking out the window or going out in public and wishing that I was just one of those people living a normal life, laughing with their friends and going to cafes and getting up early for work. I was out at 5, 6, 7 in the morning looking for my next 50 bag. And I remember seeing people get in their car and go to work, and I just wished I was them. There was a time that I remember when I was in my living room and I was looking out the window and the weather was gorgeous, a beautiful sunny day, a light breeze. It was like in the low 80s, low humidity, and I'm in my house getting high, and I was online looking for repeated hookups for my sex addiction. Between drugs and sex, I was at the bottom of the barrel. And I remember looking out that window and I just wished that I could enjoy the beautiful weather, but I was unable to because I was so deeply rooted and ingrained in my meth addiction, sex addiction, and GHB. For many years, I was alcohol addicted. I was a functioning alcoholic for many years in conjunction with my sex addiction. Sex addiction is my core addiction. But I was alcoholic for many years, and that fed that sex addiction. But once I discovered crystal meth and GHB, that just made my sex addiction such a monster that it overtook my life. It destroyed all my morals and values, and it basically made me live like an animal in a human body. And it was to the point again where I just didn't want to live. I wanted to die. I felt so unworthy, so unlovable, and dirty. And boy, did I hate my life at that time. I was very involved with cyber sex and sexting and pornography and dating apps and hookup apps and going out and partying, and ultimately led to having cyber sex with a high school teen that I met on Craigslist, and put me years behind bars. And now I have to register for life as a registered sex offender because of having cyber sex with a high school teen. So my life of drugs and sex and booze led to a horrible demise and humiliation. But I'm grateful again to say I am nearly 12 years sober from alcohol and clean from crystal meth and sex addiction. Along with a series of addictions, poppers, amyl nitrate was also one of my addictions, where I had a bottle around me at all times and I would be using poppers as often as possible, especially when it was involved in active sex addiction. And I was so abusive of my body that it's a miracle that I am healthy and strong and living well today. And I want my story, coming out of the meth sex scene, coming out of a sex addicted life, to give you hope that if you are living that way and you want to stop, but you seem to fail trying, you seem to keep going back to all those old behaviors and old addictions, even though you want to stop, and perhaps at times you have stopped, and Your life started to change a little bit here and there, but you continue going back to that lifestyle, the hopelessness and despair of it all. I know how painful that is, and I know how difficult it is to love something so much and yet hate it equally, and want to have it in your life and want it gone equally. Living that way is destructive and horrible. And I know the pain that's involved with that. And I'm here to tell you that if you're willing to do whatever it takes, if you're willing to do anything to break the spell of your methamphetamine and sex addiction, that you can. And there is another design of living that works, that can make you peaceful and serene. But I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not here to sugarcoat the transformation from a sex addicted and meth addicted life to a life of sobriety. It is difficult, it is challenging. You must be committed, determined, and you need help along the way. I'm going to share with you today some strategies that work for me that I believe will work for you. And they're simple strategies, and I think you can start those pretty much immediately. And it won't necessarily get you sober from meth and sex addiction, but it'll start the process of bringing a little bit of light into the darkness of your life. I do want to share some statistics with you, just so you have a little bit of information to the fact that you are not alone. Nearly 30 million Americans struggle with sex addiction, according to some studies, and 1.6 billion people around the world struggle with sex addiction. And to have an idea of how many 1.6 billion people are, if you could count one person per second, every second, it would take you over 12 years to equal 1.6 billion. That's how many people struggle with sex addiction. In 2021, 1.6 million Americans had a methamphetamine use disorder. That's almost 2 million Americans, and nearly 33,000 people overdosed with drugs related to methamphetamine in 2021. 2.5 million Americans from the age of 12, yes, can you imagine? But from the age of 12 to adulthood, 2.5 million Americans have used at some point crystal meth. And the average user of crystal meth begins at the age of 23, and the average age where sex addiction gets a hold on a person's soul is 18 years old. And the average person that begins recovering from their sex addiction is 37 years old. That means, according to averages, sex addicts and meth addicts battle for decades before they're able to break the cycle. And I want to help you break the cycle of your meth and sex addiction. If this sounds like you and you want to change and transform your life, I post a new video here on my YouTube channel every Tuesday. So I'd love you to subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and if you want to be notified, hit the bell as well, and you'll be notified every time I post a new video for you. And I talk about sex addiction mostly, but I talk also about other addictions and methamphetamine addiction. So methamphetamine is one of the most dangerous and addictive drugs on the market. So if you have never used crystal meth, I strongly suggest you do not. I used meth for the first time many years ago, and I felt like I could handle it. And before you knew it, I was buying it, I was having it with me at all times, I was going to parties and hosting parties, and it progressed and got to the point where I wanted to die. And I'm alive today, and I'm so happy. And I want you to live a long, healthy, beautiful life, and you can. And I'm going to talk with you right now about a few strategies that can begin to bring light into your life. So let's talk about it. These are simple strategies, and they are strategies that you can do right now, even though you're involved in your sex and meth addiction. The first one is real easy, and I strongly suggest you do it immediately, because I know deep down inside of you, I know that you're crying for help. I know that you want to change your life. I know that you feel broken and you're in pain and you're afraid. I know it. So the first thing you need to do to start to mend your brokenness is bring it to the light and tell someone about it and be honest. Just do it. Find someone that loves you unconditionally, that won't judge you, who you can be raw and real with. Because I've learned from my spiritual advisor that darkness cannot live in light. You walk in a dark room and you turn the light switch on, the darkness disappears. And if you bring the darkness of your addictions to the light and share it, it loses its power, because darkness cannot live where there is light. So bring some light in, share it, get honest about it. Doesn't mean you have to stop yet. It just means you're bringing it to the light. It just means you are getting ready to heal your brokenness. There are other methods you can use as well that are a little bit more rigorous, a little bit more direct, bold, and perhaps a lot more difficult. The next strategy you can do is take a look at all the contacts in your phone and compartmentalize them. Getting honest about your meth addiction and sex addiction is the first stage of reaching out for help, the first stage of bringing light into your darkness. The other is take a look in your phone, in your contact list, of all the people that are part of your meth and sex addiction. All the people that you have partied with, hooked up with, invited to your own parties, or people that you've met at other parties you've gone to, and look at all those people you are addictedly involved with. And those contacts, ultimately at some point, for you to truly experience sobriety, you need to eliminate them. But they're almost like a lifeline to you. They are, it would almost break you to lose contact with some of them, if not all of them, but especially a few of them. I know that there's a few in there that are much more hardcore involved with your meth and sex addiction. So rather than delete them all, because I don't think if you're involved right now in your sex and meth addiction, you're probably not going to be able to do that yet. You don't have the power yet. You don't have the support system yet. I would see if there's a way you can put them all into one file. If you can compartmentalize, if you will, which you've done that in your life. You've compartmentalized your life. So what that means is you have your life with your family and friends that know nothing about what you're doing, and then you have your addiction life. That's called compartmentalizing. So one of the strategies you can do is you take all the people, all the content, all of them that are somehow related to your meth and sex addiction, and put them in one file. Compartmentalize them, separate them from your main contact list in your phone. Separate them completely. And that's one of the strategies you're going to do while you're starting to practice separating yourself from the people that are involved with you and your active addiction. Does that make sense? Because ultimately what you want to do is you want to get rid of all your contacts. You don't want to associate with any of those people that deeply trigger your addiction. But that's going to be so hard to do, so difficult. It's going to be a process for you to achieve that. So that's what I want you to do. Go in your phone to those contacts, take all of the contacts of people that are involved in your addiction, and somehow put them in a different file and compartmentalize them, separate them from your regular contact list. The third strategy, and this one again continues to be progressively more rigid and bold and difficult to do, there are a lot of preparations that take place before you get actively involved in the methamphetamine and your sex addiction. There are rituals such as making plans, contacting people, going and buying the crystal meth, organizing a party, or going on Grindr or dating app looking for a party. So there's activities you have to do to kind of get into your active meth and sex addiction, get into that CHEMSEX scene. You were able to, in strategy number one, get honest with someone about your meth and sex addiction. And number two, you were able to take the contacts in your phone and compartmentalize them and separate them from your regular contact list. But what you do here is you find someone that you can call or talk with as you're planning to go and get involved in your meth and sex activity. You're going to discuss with that person how you're planning to go about getting involved in your CHEMSEX scene, whether it's for a weekend or a night or a week or a couple of days. Talk about it with someone that's not going to judge you, with someone that won't necessarily pressure you not to. Maybe they will because they love you and care for you, but someone that you could discuss it with, because it'll help the ritualism leading up to a weekend or a week or a night or a day of getting involved in the chemsex scene, it'll lose its power a little bit if you're able to share that with someone. So these 3 strategies won't necessarily stop your chemsex addiction, but they will be the beginning steps processing, eventually getting out of the chemsex scene. Does that make sense? Because you're so involved in the crystal meth sex addiction scene right now, and that's who I'm talking with. I'm talking with you if you're involved in the chemsex scene right now. If you're already out of it, you're just listening and watching this video, I'm hoping you're getting something out of it anyway. But for those who are involved in that now and you just don't see a way out, or you're not in enough pain to get out, or you feel unable to get out of that scene right now, well, that's where I'm meeting you right now. That's who I'm talking with. These 3 strategies, again, won't necessarily stop your chemsex addiction, but it'll begin the process of eventually breaking free and finding some hope that, yes, you can live a life no longer involved in the chemsex scene. So I strongly suggest that you consider these 3 strategies, and obviously the goal is to clean your life up. The goal is for you to live free from that grip of addiction that I know is so, I know it's so painful, and I know, boy, do I know the brokenness of it. And I know that if you're right now living in this chemsex scene or sex addiction and crystal meth scene, and you're addicted to all of this, poppers and GHB, I know that you are in pain, and I know that you're suffering. But I'm going to tell you something else. I know this to be true because it was true for me. Deep inside of you, you are a lovable, wonderful, beautiful person, deserving of peace, deserving of love, deserving of being cared for, and you are deserving of living a clean, beautiful, sober life. Yes, you are deserving of that. I know deep down inside of you, that's what you want. You know why I know that? Because you're still here watching this video. So here's what I want you to do from here. On my website, and I'll have the link below, I have 2 things that I want you to take advantage of. One is I have a 10-step strategy session that will help you break free from your sex addiction. This strategy session, it's 30 minutes in length, so I strongly suggest you take a pen and paper and you take notes and treat it like a 30-minute classroom. Also on my website, I have a free ebook called 5 Phases of Recovery from Sex Addiction. It's about 45 pages. A lot of people that offer free ebooks, they're 10 pages, 8 pages. This one is in depth. It's going to give you a lot of information. And the first phase is living in the addiction. And by the time you get to the 5th phase, it's about living a spiritual life where you no longer need to live or need to experience a life of active addiction. It's a life of freedom. And it's the 5 phases that get you there. So I strongly suggest you get them there free. And if you don't, you're crazy. I also have a 30-day Sex Addicts Recovery and Transformation Accelerator program. Now you have to apply for the program if that's something you want. I'm going to strongly suggest you apply for the program because it's not a sales call and I'm not going to push you to take the program. If you don't qualify for the program, you can't take it anyway. But I'm going to strongly suggest you apply for it, and we'll schedule a phone call between you and me, and we could talk about your sex addiction, where you are right now and where you want to be. And perhaps I can help you bridge the gap. I am so grateful you spent this time with me today. And if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, hit that like button. I post a new video every Tuesday. And these videos are basically lessons in classrooms where you and I can work together for you to have a life of freedom. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next Tuesday.